At this time, I'd like Mr. Bill Hetrick, Senior Class Advisor, to come to the stage to introduce tonight's keynote speaker. Thank you, Mr. Baker, and good evening. Congratulations, class of 2016. It's quite an honor. I never really make it to the stage to wish you well, but I very much do so. Good evening. Bill Powell graduated from Saegertown in 2006, and he says the fact that 10 years have passed since then makes him feel incredibly old. During his time here, we played basketball poorly and volleyball only slightly less poorly. He was a National Merit Scholar and finished 4th in his class, though he certainly deserved worse given his sardonic attitude and apathetic approach to his schoolwork. He earned his bachelor's degree from the University of Missouri, home to the nation's first and best school of journalism, then went on to intern at fancy publications like the New York Times, Esquire, and the Meadville Tribune. For the past several years, he's been working as an editor and feature writer at city magazines in Cincinnati and St. Louis, covering such diverse subjects as the death penalty, the Ferguson protests, and high school show choir. He's written award-winning profiles of a truck driver turned politician, an amateur competitive eater, and a college student who survived a vicious chimp attack. Not kidding. This fall, inspired to make a bigger impact on issues about which he has written, Bill will be enrolling as a student at Yale Law School, which he insists is the country's most prestigious institution of legal learning, no matter what those jerks from Harvard might tell you. He'll be moving to New Haven, Connecticut, along with his lovely wife, Rachel, their newborn daughter, Mara, and their lazy greyhound, Slider. Bill hopes to use his law degree to work in the public interest, righting at least one or two of our nation's many wrongs. Saegertown alum Sharon Stone was unavailable to give tonight's graduation speech, so Bill is here to do it instead, and it is my great pleasure to introduce Bill Powell.
Good evening to teachers, administrators, parents, family, friends, and most important, Saegertown High School's class of 2006. Congratulations on your accomplishment, and thank you for allowing me to be part of your big day. Let's hear it for the seniors. Yes. What I'm going to say next is such a hackneyed platitude that would be downright annoying if it weren't so completely true. Your parents are smarter than you are, but you're too dumb to realize it, and so you don't thank them nearly often enough. I myself am a parent now, so I know that it's a great privilege to be a parent, but it's also sometimes a thankless job. So graduates, let's give a round of applause to your parents. Without whom, you wouldn't be here, literally. And for a final thank you, let me turn just for a moment to your teachers. When I start at Yale this fall, many of my classmates will be graduates of elite New England prep schools. These are private high schools with $1 million endowments, annual tuition that tops $20,000, sprawling tree-lined campuses, and alumni in the upper strata of business and politics. SHS might seem somewhat meager by comparison. Not so. Whatever measure of success that I've enjoyed since leaving here, I owe in no small part to the excellent education I received at Saegertown. And that's because of the dedicated service of its talented teachers. Let's please join me in applauding them now as well. Pleasantries behind us, we've come to the point in this graduation speech when traditionally the speaker tells a cute fictional story with a painfully obvious moral. These are stories that involve fish and tortoises and hares and those types of things. Unfortunately for you, I have no idea where celebrities and teachers go to find these allegorical anecdotes. As a journalist, I'm better at fact than fiction. Here's a true story that happens to concern the work of fiction. In AP English, my senior year here, Mr. Hetrick asked us to write a short story. Now, I should say up front, my story was not based on any actual events, so don't get the wrong idea. But I wrote about a series of criminal acts that culminated with the protagonist snorting a massive pile of cocaine, the likes of which has not been seen since the final scene of the movie Scarface. The writing might have been okay, but the subject matter was ever so slightly inappropriate. At the top of the paper Hetrick wrote, "You have a gift, use your power for good, not evil." I've tried to live up to that mandate ever since. I first decided to go to journalism school because I was an NBA fan, and I knew that newspaper beat writers went to games for free and got to hang out in the locker room with the players. 10 years later, I've covered exactly one preseason NBA game. Ultimately, I ended up working in magazines rather than newspapers because they allow the time and space to tell a story with more depth. And I ended up in news rather than sports because I realized that life is a game played for much higher stakes than basketball. It's funny how the path of life can lead you places you don't expect. But I was right about one thing. The best part of being a journalist is the access. Simply because I work at a magazine, just about anyone in the world is willing to talk to me. Over the past few years, I've interviewed former President Bill Clinton, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt star Ellie Kemper, on whom I have a huge crush, don't tell my wife, and former heavyweight champ Mike Tyson. In fact, my interview with Iron Mike went so well that at the end, he told me that I'm a good person. Of course, Iron Mike is a convicted rapist, so I did take the compliment with a small grain of salt. Most of you, it's probably safe to assume, won't become professional journalists. But I do think that a few of the stories I've had the pleasure to tell in my career as a writer bear lessons that can help you in your adult lives. Though I'll warn you right up front, if you're hoping that I will tell you the secret to life, spoiler alert, I don't know it. Story number one. Within the past couple of weeks, zookeepers in Cincinnati killed a gorilla to protect a young boy who fell into its enclosure, setting off an international controversy. The incident reminded me of a story I wrote last year, profiling a young man from St. Louis named Andrew Oberle. An experienced zookeeper and aspiring primatologist, Oberle was working at Chimp Eden in South Africa in 2012 when, while giving a tour, he was attacked by two of the chimps. They dragged him and mauled him, shredding his body, literally tearing him limb from limb. Expert observers said it was the worst animal attack that they'd ever seen. Oberle was taken to a local hospital where doctors assumed he would die. Eventually, when he didn't, they started looking for a way to send him back to the United States. I'll tell you the rest of the story if I can get this page to turn. It just so happened that right then, Helen Sandcool, a nurse at St. Louis University Hospital, known for rescuing people in dire situations like this one, was at home recovering from a heart attack when she got an email about Oberle. She sprung into action. Bandaged head to toe, Oberle was flown to St. Louis. Doctors use this really weird new technology that uses tissue from pig bladders to regrow Oberle's skin, and actually some of his fingers and toes magically grew back. One of his arms had been so badly eaten that doctors actually cut open his abdomen and sewed the arm inside and put his skin back over, and they left it there for weeks so that it could heal back together. And then eventually put it back down. In total, he endured more than 24 surgeries. An army of supporters raised money for his care, and dedicated nurses came to his house every single day to change his bandages and bathe him by hand, a process that took hours. Somehow, throughout the entire ordeal, Oberle kept an unfailingly upbeat attitude. And now, miraculously, after years of grueling rehab, he's doing just fine. He landed a great job doing fundraising at the hospital. He threw out the first pitch at a Cardinals game, and he recently acquired a new bionic hand that gives him much greater dexterity. And Sandcool, the nurse, she actually gives Oberle credit for saving her life because taking care of him helped her recover after her heart attack. Oberle's comeback story teaches us that persistence pays off, that sometimes you have to rely on the kindness of strangers, that a little luck goes a long way, and that courage can overcome even the most daunting challenges. Story number two. Not long ago, I interviewed Bob Costas. Before he became the host of the Olympics and Sunday Night Football, Costas got his start as a play-by-play announcer for the Spirits of St. Louis, a now defunct basketball team that played in the wild, wacky, and short-lived ABA. He told me a story about a road trip when the Spirits were in Louisville, where they lost to the Kentucky Colonels. The team couldn't afford a charter jet, so they met at the airport for the flight back to St. Louis. The traveling secretary handed out the itinerary for the flight, and it read, TWA Flight 305, depart Louisville 8 o'clock, arrive St. Louis 7:56, 4 minutes earlier. Because St. Louis is in a different time zone than Louisville, and because the flight was less than an hour, it actually landed earlier than it took off. The team's best player, a legendary character named Marvin Bad News Barnes, walked over to Bob, draped his arm around his shoulder, brandished the itinerary, and said, bro, 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 I do not know about you, but as for me, I am not getting on any time machine. And he rented a Mercedes and drove back to St. Louis. Of course, there are no time machines. You only get one shot at life, and it goes quick. You have to decide what sort of life you want to live, and then go live it. Otherwise, to extend the airplane metaphor too far, it can be all too easy to live life on autopilot, floating from one milestone to the next. You'll graduate from high school and then college, move on to a boring job and a house in the suburbs and a spouse and 1.5 kids and a puppy. That can be a wonderful way to live your life. I have all of those things. You should only do that if you choose it, and not because it happened while you weren't paying attention or while you were just going with the flow. The message here is not so much that all your wildest dreams will come true. This is not a Disney movie, and there are only so many jobs for astronauts and NFL coaches and heads of state. No, my point is that the best way to live your life is to make an earnest effort. You'll probably fail, but then you can try again anyway. Which brings me to my last story, number 3. My friend Hedy Epstein was born in 1924 in Germany. She grew up in a small town called Kippenheim. When Hedy was not yet 10, Adolf Hitler came to power. In her village, everyone knew which families were Jewish. Her math teacher was an SS man, and when it was her turn to answer questions, he would sometimes put his hand on his revolver. Other times he would even point it at her. Eventually, she was expelled from school, her home was ransacked, and her father was dragged away and thrown in jail. Her parents decided to send her away on a kinder transport. For those not familiar with that, in the 9 months preceding World War II, the British government took in nearly 10,000 children, mostly Jews from across Europe. Hedy was child number 5,580. At first, she hated her parents bitterly for sending her away. Later, she realized they saved her life. Her mother and father died at Auschwitz, and her aunts and uncles mostly all perished in the Holocaust as well. She moved to New York and got a job at an agency that helped resettle Holocaust survivors in the U.S. On her first day, an African-American co-worker showed her around the office. Epstein asked the woman to lunch, but she declined. What about tomorrow? No. A few days later, she asked again. No. Epstein asked if there was some problem. No, the woman replied, but you know why I can't go. No, I don't know why. The woman said, Negro people can't go to eat where white people go, and white people don't want to eat where I can eat. Epstein was confused. Hadn't Lincoln freed the slaves? Her coworker explained that yes, he had, but problems persisted, including at the time segregation. Eventually, they went to eat together, and the experience launched Epstein into a life of working for civil rights. For years, she ran the St. Louis chapter of Freedom of Residence, an organization that fought for fair housing. She helped a black couple that had been prevented from buying a home in a nice white neighborhood fight their case all the way to the Supreme Court, and eventually won. In more recent times, she became active in the Free Gaza movement, traveling to the Middle East many times to protest the Israeli occupation of Palestine. She was tear-gassed in the West Bank and suffered hearing damage from sound bombs. I met Hedy a few days after a police officer named Darren Wilson shot and killed an unarmed teenager named Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, near where she and I live in St. Louis. On August 18, 2014, at the age of 90, Epstein was arrested while protesting Missouri Governor Jay Nixon's decision to send the National Guard to Ferguson to crack down on the demonstrations. Police handcuffed the nonagenarian, who was wearing a black t-shirt that said, "Stay human," and charged her with failure to disperse. I invited her to lunch to interview for a story I was writing. She explained to me that having lived as a Jew in Nazi Germany, she could understand what it might feel like to be black in America. She told me, quote, if somebody is being discriminated against or being hurt, I am being hurt. If their freedom is limited, my freedom is limited. I can't sit idly by and say, let somebody else do something about it. Because if you are a bystander, you're just as guilty as the perpetrators. I don't think I could go to sleep at night knowing that I would take that position. And she told me, I like to sleep at night. Last month, at age 91, Hedy Epstein died of cancer. In her memory, I would like to leave you with the words that she used to end many speeches that she gave. Remember the past, don't hate, and don't be a bystander. Thank you and congratulations.